I'm a almost 20-year police officer, and I have a little bit of a Facebook following. My opinions are my own. I don't represent my agency and the opinions of my agency. Most of them know me personally. I've been, again, working there almost 20 years, so they know that I'm not a threat to them or as far as a physical threat in that sense. Most of them may not agree with me, but they recognize that I have a right to ask these questions. I think with the Parkland shooting, because we have children victims, people are a little bit more sensitive, much like Sandy Hook. When you have children victims or alleged children victims, people are a little bit more sensitive to not question the official narrative. I, as an investigator, or frontline investigator, I've been asking questions, and sometimes you have to offend people if you want to get to the heart of the matter. And as an investigator, I can't be too sensitive about the questions I ask if I want the truth. So, I mean, my colleagues, they know that I'm there to try to get to the truth. They may not agree with what I'm saying, and most of the time it's because they haven't taken the 5 minutes to look at something other than the mainstream media. If they take 5 minutes to look at independent media and some of the questions independent media is asking, I think they would be more on board to how I'm thinking. I've been, again, a police officer for 20 years. If you look at my personnel file, I don't have a history of violence. I'm not, I don't insult people. I don't use profanity when I can. As a law enforcement officer, I'm, by profession, a conspiracy theorist. A conspiracy, most of my colleagues, I think they would have a hard time explaining the definition of a conspiracy theorist. Conspiracy, two or more people, getting together to commit some kind of crime. A theory, having an idea based on a certain amount of evidence or information that a crime or these individuals did something. That's what a conspiracy theorist is. So am I being persecuted because I believe that our government would lie to us to further a political agenda? I mean, we know 9/11 was a lie. We know what we're hearing now with Syria, that there were no chemical weapons, so that's kind of a lie. History has shown our governments will lie to us to further political agenda, and that, by definition, is terrorism. So we're actually all being terrorized by our own government.
All right, so how are you doing?
Great, you don't mind our record, do you?
No, you can record all you want. I'm going to have to ask you to take the mask off, though.
Under what statute?
There's a statute.
The officer wanted me to remove the mask, and I had already researched it and knew that I didn't need to remove my mask. There was no law against it. But the officer at the time, she didn't read the full policy. She only read, a section of the statute and didn't completely read it. Long story short, I was arrested. 3 weeks later, charges were dropped because, the state recognized that I wasn't doing anything. I was well within my First Amendment right to expression. So yeah, I've been doing this since 2013. And my red pill moment, as I tell people, was I wear this architects and engineers shirt because my red pill moment was the realization that 9/11 couldn't have happened just based on 19 terrorists, as we've been fed all these years to believe. That brings me to a story once when I was on patrol, and I recall seeing a helicopter flying overhead over one of our high schools. And the helicopter had been there for about 10 minutes before we, as a law enforcement agency, were notified of anything. And I don't even think they actually told us anything, but I had the question, like, why is this helicopter flying over? And that led me to believe that they could be running something without even notifying us and tell us later. As law enforcement, I would respond thinking it's something real, but they've already filmed what they've needed to film prior to me even getting there. I was first notified by an email telling me that Sun Sentinel was looking to get a hold of me in reference to an investigation. So I received an email, and within seconds, my wife contacted me and said, "Hey, your Sun Sentinels have been contacting her, trying to get a story or trying to get her to make a statement." Anyone in a position that raises doubt, they have to attack. And thanks to the deep pockets of the mainstream media, they can do that without costing them anything. I have a story I've shared with only a few people, but it was a case of a mother. She went into the court to have her son institutionalized. It's called an ex parte order. And this mother, she clearly has some issues of her own, but she was able to walk into the court, tell the court that she was afraid of her son, and the judge rubber stamped it without ever seeing the son in person or having someone come out to interview the son. So the judge rubber stamps this ex parte order, and we had to take this young man, he was in his 30s, had to take this young man in for a psych eval to be institutionalized for 3 to 4 weeks. And I remember this because it was like a couple days before Thanksgiving, and he had a job, he was a DJ, and he was, obviously he lost that gig. And the story gets even more interesting when approximately 3 or 4 weeks later, we get another phone call, same address, and the mother again had gone in to the courthouse and said she's still afraid. Judge rubber stamps it, and we had to take this young man in for the second time weeks before Christmas, before the New Year. So I tell people that's a great example of how the system itself is sick. And I don't say that it's broken. I say it's designed that way for a reason, just so they can, for whatever reason, just destroy people's lives. I think, as we stated before, mainstream media, they've been weaponized against us. So now it's up to us as individuals to create use our social media platforms, our Twitter accounts, or whatever we have available to us to be the media. And again, we may not all own $1,000 cameras, but we all have cell phones. And all it takes to be independent journalist is a camera and ask questions. And we're getting to the point now where if you ask a question, you're considered delusional or you're somehow unfit to do your job just by asking questions. They do these drills around the same time on purpose because it helps to, if someone were to stumble upon something involving these hoaxes, they can easily say, oh, well, this is just a part of a drill. So I think they do run these drills concurrent to something that just happened to go live to help, defend in case someone would notice something. I tell people when I hear death tolls of, 10 or more, that my spidey senses immediately start tingling. When you watch Sandy Hook, again, Boston Marathon, all of these things that we have to question, the body language just doesn't match the trauma that we should be seeing. So, and there's a science to that. And I've been doing this for 20 years, and I don't see genuine emotion, which leads me to question the narrative. In my 20 years, we've never been trained on the principles of the Constitution. The Second Amendment is not there for hunting. And I know it may seem, treasonous to the traitors of this country to say the Second Amendment is there for corrupt government. I mean, things are going to get to a certain point where we need our weapons to say, no, we're not going to take it anymore. And I think that goes to the heart of the Second Amendment. The average person, that is raised through government education, they don't understand the Second Amendment. So this is where I try to present that on my Facebook page, that the Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting. It's about corrupt government. The 13th Amendment says slavery is prohibited except for the conviction of a crime. For me, as a law enforcement, that makes sense when you see our police statute book. I think when I started in 1998, the statute book was maybe like that. Now it's almost 3 or 4 inches thick. Yeah. So if you want to create a nation of slaves, you have to create more laws. More laws to be and once I recognized that as a police officer, I started doing my policing differently because I recognized me arresting someone for a victimless crime was only serving the prison system, was only serving the corrupt system or systemic system of racism. Because now if I arrest you for a drug charge, you can't live certain places, you can't get certain jobs and things like that. I think that adversely affects the community more than this person having a dime bag of marijuana in their pocket. I want to get people to recognize America is changing. She's going through a culture shift. I tell people now we live in a fear culture. And I think what I want to express to people that we need to be able to ask questions. We need to be able to research history. For me, I didn't start understanding what was really going on until I started reading a few books. I started watching a few documentaries, listening to a few lectures. And for me, that helped open my eyes to what's really going on politically, locally, and globally.